Okay, so today is session number 21, 22. I forgot. 1, 2, 3. On the Reddit Fusion category, yes, it's 22, 23. Yeah, there remain 3 sessions, 22, 23, 24. So 2 sessions this week, 1 session next week, and then it's done for this semester. We will continue to cover this paper next semester. So last time we finished section 3.3. So this section 3.3 was about what's the title? Projective centralizer. Yeah, projective centralizer. So now, to finish section 3, we will prove some theorem we mentioned before, but we did not prove. We say, for example, theorem 3.4. We will prove in the next section 3.4. And there will be three subsections like that, proving some previous result. And then it will be the section 4. Okay, so the proof of theorem 3.4. So don't worry, I will recall the statement of this theorem. Because we will prove it, so at least we need the statement. So let me go back a little bit. Yeah, because this statement require some preparation, which we mentioned before, but I will read again. So 3.4. Let me try to find that. Theorem 3.4. So exceptionally, I go far back in the note, because this is really required. So 3.4. Where is it? Here. Okay. So so let me read this part. So the equivalence relation. Okay. So here, we need to read again from here. So given a fusion subcategory D of a Reddit fusion category C, we define an equivalence relation on the set of simple objects up to isomorphism as follows. So two simple objects are equivalent if there exists an object in the centralizer of D such that Y is a subobject of the tensor Y, tensor W. So this defines an equivalence relation. Okay. So if you consider an equivalence class and you consider the full abelian subcategory generated by an equivalence class, it is called a D prime component of C. And as we mentioned before, this terminology is justified by the fact that if two simple objects are equivalent, So two simple objects are equivalent if only they lie the same indecomposable component of C as a D prime module. Okay. Okay, so the following result, so theorem 3.4, we will prove now. Generalize a result by Bruguière and Huger. So you take a fusion subcategory of a British fusion category C. You consider the submatrix of the S-Til matrix where X X is simple in D and Y is a simple object of C. So this matrix, if you have the S-Til matrix for C and C, if you truncate and you have S-Til D. You truncate, you only consider the D part. Okay. So you have a piece, a submatrix of the S-Til matrix, and the theorem 3.4 is really, in some sense, the fundamental theorem when you need to reformulate the notion of non-degenerate, because we deduce from this theorem that braided fusion category is non-degenerate if only its centralizer is trivial. So this is what we want to we will prove today. So let me come back to the current part of the note. So we will prove that. So I did not read it again because I will write it again here. So theorem 3.4, let C be a braided fusion category. And let D in C be a fusion subcategory. The rank of S-Til D equal the number of D prime component of C. In particular, C is non-degenerate if and only if C, the centralizer of C, is trivial. Okay. So this is what we want to show now. So before going into the details of the proof, the first subsection will explain the ID of the proof. Okay. So you take a fusion subcategory D. So you define inner product on the function mapping from the set of simple objects of the isomorphism to the field. So define an inner product on function f or g from the simple object of D to the field by, so the inner product is defined like that. So the sum over the simple object of the isomorphism, square norm of x, f of x, g of x star. This is equation 49. So you have this inner product on this finite dimensional vector space. Here it's finite dimensional. You have finitely many simple objects. And so you map to the field. So it's it's a vector space isomorphic to that. Nothing mysterious. And you define the inner product like that. Okay. Then we will consider a specific function coming from the S-tilde matrix. So one column of the S-tilde matrix will provide this kind of function. For any y simple in C, define the function hy as before, define using the S-tilde matrix like that. So this is just one column or one row, it depends on your convention of how to write a matrix. But say one column of the truncated S-tilde matrix. So one column of the S-tilde matrix. Okay. So here you want to briefly recall the definition of the equivalence relation. So recall that we defined an equivalence relation on simple of C up to isomorphism by declaring Y isomorphism to Z if there exists W simple in D such that blah 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 as I already mentioned, such that in D, in the centralizer of D, such that Y is a subobject of the tensor W. Yeah, so here, just a little comment. In the previous section, when we first introduced this equivalence relation, we define W in D in the centralizer of D, not necessarily simple, but you can restrict to simple because the category is semi-simple. By semi-simplicity, I guess using semi-simplicity, it's easy to see that this equivalence relation can be alternatively formulated only using simple object. Okay. Okay, so again, the equivalence classes under this relation are called the D prime component. Equivalence classes under this relation are referred to as the D prime component of C. Okay. So what is the idea? What is the idea of the proof? The core idea of the proof is the following. So we want to show that we define the function hy here. We want to show that if this function, so you define a function xy and you define a function xz, these two functions are equal if only if y and z belong to the same D prime component. This is the core idea. So this may be surprising. In fact, you have y and z that are in the same component, but they are not isomorphic. They are just in the same component, but this is enough to get that this function is the same. And in fact, the converse is also true. So, core idea of the proof is to show that the function hy and hz are equal if and only if y and z belong to the same D prime component. Centralizer of D component. So this is the first step of the proof, and the second step involves some orthogonality. So the second step is to say that in fact two such functions hy, hz are orthogonal if and only if they lie in distinct D prime component. So you have a very strict alternative. They are the same, meaning that they are the same component, or if they are in y and z are in different components, it means that they are orthogonal, the function. So it's very rigid. There is nothing in between. So furthermore, this function are orthogonal under the previous inner product, of course. So it was equation 49. If and only if and only if y and z lie in distinct D prime component. D prime component. So these two key results for the proof will be formalized in the coming lemma P336, 337. This result are formalized in the coming lemma 336 and 337 below. It follows that the distinct column of the S-Til matrix index D are linearly independent. So by distinct, you mean columns which are not the same entry. Of course, so you have several columns. Some columns can have the same entry, so they are not distinct. But if you consider only the distinct one, then they are linearly independent. In fact, they are orthogonal. And they are indexed by the D prime component. So you get the result. The rank is exactly the number of D prime component. This result of formula below. This implies that the distinct column and here the word distinct is a little bit confusing because you can have two columns. Two different columns are distinct by definition, but if their entry are the same, we will say that as a vector, they are the same. So two distinct columns mean distinct as a vector, not I hope it's clear. So be careful. So, two distinct columns of S-Til index D are linearly independent and are indexed by the D prime component of C. Indexed by the D prime component of D. In particular, the rank of this submatrix is exactly the number of components. In particular, the rank of this matrix is exactly the number of D prime component, which is exactly what we want to prove. Okay. Okay, so this was for the ID of the proof. So now we will prove it in details. So I'm sorry, this sentence is really badly written. Which is exactly the number of D prime component. Exactly what we want to prove. Okay, so the next subsection, we will start the proof in details. So the first step of the proof is to provide a non-spherical analog of the Verline formula. So we have the Verline formula in the spherical case for premodular category. We can have a Verline formula without spherical assumption, but we need to provide the good renormalization in order to be independent of the choice of the natural isomorphism between the identity functor and the double dual functor. So a non-spherical analog of the Verlined formula. So it was, we mentioned Verlined formula, equation 24. So remember, the Verlined formula is a formula for a premodular category. You have the S matrix, and the entry of the S matrix, if you multiply two entries of the S matrix, S, X, Y times X, X, Z, then it's the sum of with multiplicity, with fusion, the sum of SXW, with W maps on the, for W simple, with the multiplicity dimension of the multiplicity space. So it's a kind of dimension equation. Okay, so we will have the same thing here, but we will to the multiplicity space. So the S matrix is replaced by S tilde, so it's kind of renormalized, and the multiplicity space dimension is also replaced by something else. Okay. So we consider the natural isomorphism between, we take the natural isomorphism between the identity functor and the double dual functor. So it's an exercise to show that it's always exists. So you pick, so X is simple, be a chosen natural isomorphism. Between the identity functor and the double dual functor. So this natural isomorphism is defined by this collection, as usual, and satisfies all the axiom of natural transformation, etc. So for Y, Z, W, simple, we define the following linear transformation. So define the linear automorphism, as follow, which will quantify the failure of the natural isomorphism to be monoidal. Okay, so this may not be a pivotal structure. In particular, this natural isomorphism may not be monoidal, but we can quantify the failure of being monoidal by the following linear automorphism. So T, Y, Z, W from this multiplicity space of Y, of W in Y tensor Z to itself, and to some morphism here, you map something like that. So everything is isomorphism, so you have inverse Y tensor Z composed with Y, so phi Y tensor phi Z composed with F. So this part, if it is monoidal, this part is equal to 1. Because it may not be monoidal, as I said, it quantifies the failure of being monoidal. So you can represent, if you like, this pictorially as follow. So you start from W object, you apply F morphism U when you go to Y tensor Z. Here you apply the natural isomorphism here. Now we have Y double star, Z double star. And then you apply the inverse of phi Y tensor Z. Okay. So this is a picture for that. As I said, this quantifies the failure of being monoidal for the natural transformation phi. This automorphism quantify, well, in fact there are several, quantify the failure of phi to be monoidal. Okay, so this is a vector space, and so this is an endomorphism on the vector space, so it's nothing but a matrix. This is a matrix. And so it makes sense to consider the matrix trace of this linear automorphism. So let T, Y, Z, W denote the matrix trace of this matrix, this linear automorphism. So we will use that. In fact, a renormalized version of this will replace the dimension of multiplicity space in our Verline formula. We replace the multiplicity. Okay. So okay. So a remark which may not be used later, but just to mention that you can choose the natural isomorphism in such a way, it's possible to choose the natural isomorphism in such a way that this number, this trace, are integers. But we will not need that, but it's good to know that under a good choice of the natural isomorphism phi, this can be integer, but according to the Annals paper of Ettinghoff, Nitsche, Szostrik, section 3.1, for an appropriate choice of isomorphism phi x, the value T, Y, Z, W is an integer. But we will not need that. This fact will not be needed here. Will not be needed here. In particular, if phi is a pivotal structure, this trace of the trace of this linear automorphism is nothing but the multiplicity of W in white answers. If phi is a pivotal structure, so, which means that it's a tensor natural isomorphism, particular monoidal, then this number are just the multiplicity space, the multiplicity of W in white tensor Z. Okay. So this number, in general, this number depends on the choice of the natural isomorphism. But we know if you changing the natural isomorphism mean composing it by a natural automorphism of the identity functor. And we know how this number change if you compose by such a natural automorphism of the identity functor. So the value T, Y, Z, W depend on the choice of the natural isomorphism phi. So if you replace phi by phi compose alpha, where alpha is a natural automorphism of the identity functor, natural automorphism of the identity functor so replacing phi by phi composed with alpha modify this number by a factor alpha y alpha z divided by alpha w. So if you properly normalize this value, it will become, as we mentioned before, independent of the choice. And this is the main trick when you want to do non-spherical or non-pivotal thing for braided fusion category. We define similarly, we define the S-Til matrix like that. So it's also independent of the choice. And also the square norm, etc. The normalized value as follow n tilde yzw equal d plus w divided by d plus y times d plus z times this value, where y, z, w are simple c. This is equation 15. These are independent of the choice of phi. Independent of the choice of phi. And why they are independent? Because replacing phi by phi composed with alpha, we know that you have a factor for that, this factor for that, but we also know the factor for that. And these two factors compensate. So since we saw that in subsection 281, the dimension, this dimension modified by a factor alpha A, where A, if you take A, Y, so if Y, X, Y, Z. So if you take this alpha A, you see that so the way the factor here compensates the factor here, so you get 1. So it's independent of the choice. Okay. So this number here is a multiple of this number here, but this number here is a trace of something like that here. In particular, if this Hom space is, so if Y is not a subobject of that, meaning that this space is 0-dimensional, is 0, then the trace of that is 0. So this is 0. This is 0. So note that. And the fact that Y is not a subobject of Y tensor Z, this is equivalent to say that the multiplicity of W in Y tensor Z is equal to 0. So in particular, note that n YZW tilde is equal to 0. If this multiplicity space, this multiplicity is equal to 0. Since the Hom space must be 0. Okay. And here you can say also that so in the pivotal case, NYZW tilde equal NYZW times dimension of W, dimension of Y, dimension of Z. Okay. So now we have enough material to state the generalized Verlaine formula. And I will state it and prove it after the pause. So I will shift the pause by 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes. So for all X, Y, Z simple in the Brillouin category C, we have so S tilde X, Y times S tilde X, Z equal sum for over the simple object actual isomorphism y z tilde s like. Okay, so this is equation 41, and now it's time for the pause. So pause. To 12. So let us prove this non-spherical variant formula. And so now the pictorial proof will come back. So proof. Okay. So consider the following identity coming from the hexagon axiom. Consider the identity from the hexagon axiom, the following hexagon axiom. So maybe this color there. So X, Y, Z. So you'd first make the braiding here, and then the braiding here. Again here. And finally here. Okay. So this is by hexagon axiom equal to your YZ together. So this is a double braiding like that. So that's known already. So that's early time. Okay. Hexagon axiom. So if you want to reformulate this without picture, you just say the following. So the braiding CYX tensor identity of Z composed with identity of Y, etc., etc. So this is exactly the way to write without picture. CXY compose tensor identity of Z equals C Y tensor Z compose C Y tensor Z X Y tensor Z X simple. And this is equation 52. Now, so we will not need this non-pictorial reformulation because we will do everything pictorially. So if you apply this kind of trace like that, to both sides of equation 52, you get the following. Okay. So let me copy and paste this picture, and we will apply the appropriate trace. So maybe I will delete the object and so this, maybe I need more space. So I will move a little bit. So now we apply the trace. Okay, so here the trace. So let me just draw it. Okay. So phi y. So natural isomorphism like that. So you have two. So we will have two right trace. So two trace plus like to here and here, which will go like that, and one which go like that. Okay. So phi x inverse. And okay. So you get like that, and like that. So you can convince yourself that this is exactly the application of this to that, or the application of this to that. You just first do this and this, an identity here, and finally you do this. So, okay. So now if you apply the same on the right-hand side, you get, so phi y phi z. So remember, it's not monoidal, so you cannot put them together in the same. You have to write it this way. Here it's okay. So you get that and like that. Okay. So the application of this kind of trace provide this picture. Okay. Okay. So we will explain how to evaluate the left-hand side and the right-hand side. And in fact, the equality between the two will provide the Verline formula. So the Verline formula is just evaluate that. You evaluate that. These are numbers. And you will get an equality between numbers. And this up to moving some constant the other way will be the Verline formula. So the big question here is how to evaluate that, and then how to evaluate that, and it will be done. So first, the left-hand side. The left-hand side evaluate as follow. So it is, I will explain why it is as this is the evaluation. D plus Z, S tilde XY, S tilde XZ. So why? Why? The evaluation of the left-hand side is this number. So here is Y. So why? So first, we will consider this piece. So you have this piece. So this piece up to here and here. We have this piece. Here it's Z, it's X. Here it's X. So this piece is nothing but a morphism from X to X. But X is simple, so it's just a multiple constant of the identity by Schur lemma, and the fact that the field is algebraically closed. So you have this piece. So phi z X and this way. So this is nothing but the multiple constant of the identity. Since X is simple by Schur lemma. By Schur lemma. Since X is simple. So you have this constant. So you can use this constant. So now you can replace this piece by a multiple constant of the identity. Okay? So so the left-hand side equal a constant times replace the piece by the identity. So let me just copy and paste. Copy, paste. And then remove this piece, and you just put identity. Okay. This I can put it smaller. Okay. So left-hand side. Okay, but what do you see here? You recognize the definition of the S-tilde matrix entry. The S-tilde matrix entry, this is this divided by some dimension. So this is just the S-tilde matrix times the dimension. So this is exactly lambda S-tilde entry xy times the dimension d1x d plus y. And this is just by definition. Definition 227. Okay. Now, what about this constant lambda? So now if you apply, so we are here. Now, you apply the trace minus here. You get, so applying trace minus here, you just put the natural isomorphism, doing like that. What you get is exactly the same as here. You get the entry of the S-tilde matrix with the dimension, appropriate dimension. So what you get is this xz dimension minus x d plus z, which is lambda. And here you apply you apply the trace here, and you get just d minus of x. It follows that the constant lambda is this d plus of z, because d minus of x is non-zero. So you can simplify. D minus of x is non-zero. Okay, so you can simplify. Conclusion. So the conclusion is that the left-hand side is equal to, so lambda, now we know what is lambda. We know, so you use this formula for the left-hand side with this lambda, and you exactly get the following: S tilde xy, S tilde xz, d minus x, d plus y, d plus c. Okay. So for the future, we will refer to the way to evaluate this lambda. So we will, this method here will be, we will refer to as this small star, because in the in some next proof, we will also use this trick. So we know what is the left-hand side. So the left-hand side is exactly the left-hand side of the Verline formula. And we have also this, which will be moved on the right-hand side. And we'll simplify a bit. So now what about the right-hand side? So now we want to evaluate this picture. We want a number for this picture. That will be a little bit more tricky, because we will need to use what is called the resolution of identity. We will need to rewrite the identity as a sum of the sum of idempotent, of minimal idempotent, and so the evaluation of the right-hand side is a little bit more tricky, but yeah. When you do picture, everything is look elementary, but at least it's a little bit longer. So now we need to define some minimal idempotent. So for each simple in C, consider the minimal idempotent, minimal idempotent, in fact, denote idempotent endomorphism. No, this is not minimal idempotent, sorry. This is just idempotent corresponding to the multiplicity space. So it can be written as a sum of minimal idempotent, but for here we will need the minimal idempotent later. But this is not minimal. This is just the idempotent endomorphism of right answer C, projecting onto the maximal, on all the components isomorphic to W, so they can have multiple components. The number of components is the multiplicity. So projecting onto the maximal direct summand isomorphic to multiple of W. So right answer Z is a direct sum of Y, Z, W, W. And this is a multiplicity space, as you like. So we are just projecting on this part. Okay. So right answer C equal direct sum W C of W. Or let me write it with multiplicity space. M Y Z W times W. This is multiplicity space. Multiplicity space. And the projection we are considering. So pi so this is an isomorphism. Let me see. So it projects on this component. Let me just write that like that. Okay. Okay. So you can rewrite. So you can rewrite, in fact, the right-hand side as follow. But in fact, we will write without picture, but we will prove it with picture, and we will no more follow without picture. So then the right-hand side give following formula. Right-hand side. So the following formula: d minus of x sum over the simple trace plus identity. So don't worry, it's a little bit complicated. I will write it in terms of picture and it will be much more clear. So you first apply. So you remember the right-hand side is the application of some traces on the hexagon axiom equation. So here you put the idempotent right answer C W S tilde. So this is a way to evaluate the right-hand side, and this is also, you can simplify as follow again. Sum for W in simple object D plus W T Y Z, so the trace before. So why we have that? So let me do why we can evaluate the right-hand side. So why we can evaluate this part. So this part is evaluated this way. It is proved here. So now we want to evaluate the right-hand side this way. Now we will just do picture. We'll do picture only, because it's much more convenient. So resolution of identity. The identity of Y tensor Z is the sum of the idempotent of course. So YZ, YZ. Okay. But this idempotent R can be written as a sum of minimal idempotent. Sum. So I put an index K for the minimal idempotent. And in fact, the minimal idempotent okay. So you can write it this way. So you have a projection. So it's a sum of minimal idempotent, but the minimal idempotent can be written this way by the Karoubian property of the category. The category is abelian, so it's Karoubian, which means that it is idempotent complete. So every idempotent, so here everything is semi-simple. So every idempotent can be written as sum of minimal idempotent, and then every idempotent can be written of this form here, where so P is a projection, I is an so P is an epimorphism, I is a monomorphism, Pk, and the composition of the two is this way. So you can call that the resolution of identity if you like. So this is well known. Resolution of identity. So here you say so there is two piece decomposition. Decompose the idempotent into a sum of minimal idempotent plus apply idempotent complete property of the category, of the abelian category. Abelian category. So idempotent complete Karoubian. Okay, so you can write the identity this way. And the sum here is sum over all the minimal idempotent. And you can write this way. So maybe you can write the details as an exercise. So not this. Anyway. So this is fundamental. Once you have that, we can apply the naturality of the braiding, and you can move into the braiding. So you so let me show you. So now you want to evaluate this piece of this picture. And past. Want to evaluate this picture. So you apply the resolution of identity here. resolution of identity. So you have the identity here. So this, you have the identity here, so you can replace this identity by that. So you have this, you can put this sum here. So you have a sum of something, and this something, you have these two morphisms. You can keep the first here and put the second here, because by naturality of the breeding, you can move it up to here. So you get as follow. So by the above picture, above identity. So let me write resolution of identity. Resolution of identity and by naturality. Let me change the color. Resolution identity and naturality. Naturality of the breeding. You get the following picture. Okay, so the epimorphism, you keep the epimorphism on the top, but the monomorphism is below, because he went through all the breeding by naturality. So because of that, in between you have W. So you have a single string. So of course you need to put the sum W simple, sum over K. Here you have the natural isomorphism. And here you will get also some natural isomorphism. Okay. So like that. You have something like that. And here the double breeding here. Okay. And you have the trace and the trace. Okay. But now, what do you get here? Here it's W, and here it's X. Okay, so now, what do you do? You see this piece. So what piece? What are we doing? Oh, yeah, double piece. Okay, so you evaluate. You have this piece from W to W. So this is a morphism from W to W. So we apply the same trick as before. This piece is just, so it's a morphism from W to W, so it's a multiple constant of the identity. So you can replace this piece by identity times a constant. And this constant, we know, as before, it's some dimension times some entry of the resting matrix. So we can directly do as before to get. That's why I use the star here, because you use the same trick as here. You evaluate the lambda, the constant. So as for the star, so this is equal to as for the point star as follow. So sum W simple sum over k, and then we know the lambda, the constant is like that in this case, d minus x, and now you have the identity here. So you just write p k identity w I k, and then phi y phi z, and the trace. But we know that this here, so where is it? Wait, no, not yet. So we know that this sum is the idempotent. So this is the sum of the minimal idempotent. So this is the big idempotent here. So you can come back. So the sum here, so this do not depend on k, so you can put it out. So you get the sum of that, which will come back to the idempotent, so initial idempotent, big idempotent. So this is equal to d minus x sum y simple s tilde x w, and you have the big idempotent. Y phi z. Okay, and then okay, so this piece is exactly trace plus identity y tensor trace plus of the big idempotent. By y tensors. But in fact, the use of the big idempotent may not be required. In fact, we don't need them. We can directly say the resolution of identity like that. We don't need that because we are here. So you get that. So you get this piece of the equation, but in fact, what we want is that. But to get that, you don't need to start from here. In fact, you just start from here. You restart from here. So this is equal to, this one is useless. 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 You don't need that. So you restart directly from here. So this is equal to what? So this, what is that? So this, but you have this. And this is equal to what? Okay, so now we want to use this linear automorphism we mentioned before. So here you have these two natural, the tensor product of these two natural transformations, these two isomorphisms. And we know we have also that, but there is a failure. It's not equal. So the failure is quantified by the linear automorphism we mentioned before. So we can reformulate this way. So PK. The natural automorphism applied to this monomorphism. Here it's W. And then now you can put phi like that. So it's just by definition. And the trace. So you have that, which is equal to trace plus PK compose. Okay, so now you have a trace of something, a trace of a composition, but this trace depends on a natural isomorphism. So you can permute, the component here. You can permute this and this. For that, you only need the natural isomorphism. You don't need to be monoidal. So this is equal to the trace plus of that y z w I k compose pk. And you can justify as follow. Because phi is a natural transformation. So what is by definition of a natural transformation has something to do with so the natural transformation says the following: pk double star composed with phi z equal phi w compose pk. This is natural transformation. So if you apply that in the formula for the trace, you get that you can permute the two like that. Okay. So let me finish. I will take one extra minute to finish because I'm almost done. So you get that. Okay. So this is equal to, so you can permute in the picture this and this. So you get that this is equal to T, Y, Z, W, I, K, P, K. Now you have the trace, but only for W. And that's very convenient because, oh, I forgot the natural isomorphism here, this one. So phi W, this is very convenient because W is simple. So this piece is exactly, so up to here, some constant. Oh. Yeah. Some constant time identity of W. So this is equal to lambda k, and then it's just d plus of W. So what they remain to show as an exercise is the sum of the lambda k. So the sum of this constant lambda k is exactly the trace, the matrix trace of this matrix. So you sum over the minimal idempotent. So it should not be complicated, which is trace y, z, w. So the right-hand side is okay. So right-hand side, okay. And so now we are done. So comparing, if you compare both sides, right-hand side and left-hand side, we obtain the Verline formula. Identity 41. Yeah, tomorrow I will start from that. I will explain. So we will have a formula. We have this formula. So I will explain in more details tomorrow. Because now it's time to stop. So more detail tomorrow. More details tomorrow. But you have all what you need for that. So see you tomorrow.